Hey, what's going on, everybody? Not your average Josh back here today, and I am doing a full-on spoiler review of the new Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse movie. Was going to go ahead and do an out-of-theater reaction and a non-spoiler review when I first saw this at the time I'm recording this last Thursday. But I figured I'm probably going to see this a few more times, and I did. I've seen this movie 4 times now, and so I figured I would just go ahead and wait until today, which is Monday after the movie came out, and just go ahead and do a full-on spoiler review, talk about everything that I loved about this movie. And spoiler alert, I pretty much loved almost everything about this movie. There is a couple things I will mention right at the top that at its worst would fall into the mixed category for me, but honestly, I pretty much loved everything about this movie. So I'm going to be talking in length about all the details in this. But before I start, I do want to say, as I say with all my videos, hit that like button down below. Also leave a comment if you have any thoughts on this movie. Have you seen it yet? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What are your positives? What are your negatives with this movie? Let me know. Leave it down below. And also hit that subscribe button as well if this is your first time watching any of my videos, or if you're a returning viewer as well. Any support for this channel is very much appreciated. You can also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So again, I appreciate all the support. Let's go ahead and get into this spoiler review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse was directed by Joaquin Dos Santos, Kent Powers, and Justin K. Thompson, and the writing credits go to, of course, the great Lord and Miller, and Dave Callahan also receiving credits as well. And this time around, Miles Morales catapults across the multiverse, where he encounters a team of spider people charged with protecting its very existence. When the heroes clash on how to handle a new threat, Miles must redefine what it means to be a hero, and of course, Spider-Man. This is a movie that is probably, if not one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Just recently watching Into the Spider-Verse again, came out about 5 years ago. If you haven't seen that movie or seen my review, it is up on this channel. You can go check that out. I really loved that first movie, Into the Spider-Verse. Loved it more than ever when I just watched it recently. I rated it a 10 out of 10, which was pretty surprising for me. Honestly, I remember first watching Into the Spider-Verse, and I liked it pretty well when I saw it in the theaters, but it really has grown on me each time I've watched it, and just everything about that movie pretty much I just love. So there was really a high bar for me personally, and with a lot of people after that first movie on how was the second movie going to do? Was it going to live up? And for me, I was just hoping that would be anywhere close and hopefully maybe potentially be as good as that first one. And I can say this movie, Across the Spider-Verse, it met my expectations and it exceeded them amazingly. I honestly was not expecting that at all. Again, just hoping for the best. And I'm going to talk extensively about a lot of things with this movie, but I guess I'm going to go ahead and start out probably just going through all the sequences I enjoyed with this movie. And the first thing is the opening sequence you get with Gwen Stacy. Now, I was not expecting them to explore her character as much as they did in this movie. I really loved it so much. She was in the first one, of course, a fair amount, but for me, honestly, watching that first one, I never really got that full-on romantic chemistry between Miles and Gwen. You definitely, of course, get that in this movie, especially near the beginning of this. And also just really explore Gwen Stacy's personal life. The first, this prologue that happens at the beginning of this movie is just all about her relationship with her dad, what her life like as Spider-Woman is on her Earth, and you get to see the origin story with Peter and how he turns into the Lizard. And I had heard, I think maybe briefly before that has happened in the comics with Gwen Stacy, Peter turning into the Lizard, but it was just really crazy to see that go down and how really tragic that turned out to be. And then you mix that with just this relationship with her dad, Peter dying, and her dad being going to be eventually a captain, of course, on a police team, which mirrors a lot of Spider-Man stories. And the fact that he's going after Spider-Woman, and Gwen Stacy still has not told her dad the classic story there, and then just when it all culminates in that just a wonderful scene. Honestly, one of the best scenes for me in this movie. And the first scene when I was watching this for the first time on Thursday, where I was like, that was just a great scene. After it was over, you get the face-off between Gwen and her dad, and just the moment where they're arguing and she's like, please, you understand. She's trying to get him to believe, and then he just puts up that one shot that and then you get that beautiful red animation and the music, which was like kind of a mix of old Western standoff music and the kind of the score they have been using in this prologue. And I just got chills when that happened. He shoots the shot off in the air, and you get that just really almost just really cold, menacing line of "No, you don't understand." And that the camera shot, obviously it's anime, but the shot on him with the, again, the red colored animation in the background, the way they used in Gwen's world specifically the colors to show the emotions of the characters was so fucking brilliant. Like it's so vibrant and just throughout this whole movie, but just the way they were able to somehow and make the animation be just as good, if not better, while also adding in unique elements that weren't even necessarily present in the first film, because we're visiting more worlds in this. And it's just so brilliant, especially in this prologue with how they speak with emotions, and just how that prologue sets up what all the emotion that's going to be behind this movie. And you go right into, of course, now where Miles is at, and you really do feel like they mentioned it's been about a year and 4 months at the beginning when Miles is talking, and you really do feel that time has passed. And then you get right back into this relationship he has with his mom and his dad, which I just couldn't help but fall more in love with their relationship. Just them always wanting what's best for Miles. Of course, Miles still grappling with the fact that he hasn't told them that he's Spider-Man, trying to, of course, live that double life. One thing that people have kind of been talking about with this movie, the humor at the beginning of this film, I thought was definitely way more mixed in with the serious moments in this. Of course, once you get to the halfway point of this movie and through the end, is just way more of a deeper, darker, more serious tone to where the story is taking you. But I thought for the most part the humor was on point for me, like it was in the first one. I know some people said it less humor maybe, and I can see why they would say that. But for me, when the humor was on, it was hitting on all cylinders in this. I was cracking up plenty of times with this movie. Just some of the visual gags they do, along with the dialogue in this movie, the quick, witty dialogue, and then of course once you meet all the other Spider people in this, how they're able to bring all that in brilliantly. It was just so awesome. But of course, you get the beginning of this where Miles is trying to navigate his life. He's having a little bit of tension with his dad and his mom, and then of course Gwen Stacy shows back up, and of course we know now from the beginning she's with Miguel and all the crew, and you just sense from the beginning. I love how they have these little moments where you're like, something's up. You don't know what's happening yet, but Gwen, she's kind of hiding in the shadows a little bit when her and Miles are swinging around the city, and you just sense that something is going on. I love how they were kind of built that up a little bit, and really to show how Miles eventually feels betrayed from Gwen, because she obviously knew what was going down, which of course I'll get more into when I get to that. But one of the things I have to mention though is the way the music continued in this movie, pretty much just as well as it was used in the first one. How they're able to mix the soundtrack in with the score in such brilliant ways in this movie. It's so brilliant. And one of the main scenes I can really call back to where I felt the most that way was the scene where Miles, he's had the argument with his dad. He's like, "You're grounded." They're at the party, on the roof. He goes back to his room, and when he's sitting down listening to music right before Gwen comes in through the multiverse to hang out with him, see him again. And the music they use, the Hummingbird song, this was a great use of this song for this scene. When he was laying down in bed, the song was playing. It honestly took me back to being a teenager. And then when Gwen shows up, the conversation that they have with her sitting at the end of his room, I was just immediately like transported back to being a teenager. Like it just kind of these like good feelings are reminding me the good times about being a teenager. And then when she, of course, flips out of the window and she's standing there in that line of, "Is Spider-Man grounded?" And just that smile that Miles has, like, it is so relatable. I just really love that moment. And of course, the use of the music, and just throughout this movie, even when Gwen at the beginning, when she's swinging through her world, and then when her and Miles are swinging together, the music was just so integral with the tone and the mood you feel, and just the fun vibe at times with this movie when they're swinging through the city. And then, of course, the whole story really sets off. Didn't mention early on, really from the beginning of this, you get Spot introed into this movie. And I really love how at the beginning he does feel like this villain of the week, just kind of goofy character. And then how he just gets a slow, gradual, and then eventual pretty fast track build up to this very powerful presence that really could affect everything, not just Miles. But and just how it was so well done though within the story of how Spot was a very personal connection to Miles because of the fact that, of course, he was there when the collider went off with Kingpin, and that's how he became who he is. But how that's connected, and then how his actions, though, is affecting the entire multiverse. So it connects with both storylines with the stuff going on with Miguel and then just everything with Miles, and it all just comes to a head and culminates in that moment, of course, when Miles realized that his dad is going to be the next canon event, his canon event, and how everyone just wants him to, of course, not be involved because it could affect everything else. It's a classic Spider-Man story, but also it's just so personal to Miles and then affecting everything else going on. It's grand, but also somehow feels small scale at times because it is very personal. It's such a great, brilliant story, especially for a sequel. Of course, you already hear the comparisons of like Empire Strikes Back and some people saying maybe like Infinity War. I definitely say it's more like Empire Strikes Back because at the end of Empire Strikes Back, there was definitely like, felt more like a cliffhanger, whereas Infinity War, yeah, there was a cliffhanger because we all knew something was going to happen. They were going to try and put this back together, but Infinity War felt more like a definitive end. If you really just watch that movie alone, like, oh man, the bad guy won. Like, you could just watch that and be like, that's it. Whereas Empire Strikes Back, there's still like this ongoing story, like, well, we know this isn't it. Luke is going off, Han just got captured, they're probably getting back. It's definitely more compared to that. There's recency bias with this. That's why I kind of wanted to wait a few days before I did my review. There's a bunch of people throwing around hyperboles like best comic book movie of all time, best Spider-Man movie of all time, best sequel of all time. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. It's still so recent. But one thing I will say is, as a person, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. If obviously look over my right shoulder, No Way Home, I have a poster up here. That was probably my favorite Spider-Man movie. But I will say again, after watching Into the Spider-Verse recently, that might be above No Way Home. And then this movie, I just think the way I felt, I haven't felt this way since I saw No Way Home a couple of years ago. I just love this movie. There's a reason why I've already seen it 4 times. I'm probably going to see it a couple times again. It's everything that I think a Spider-Man story should be while being this grand, big scale sequel that is bigger, but it's not, doesn't feel like it's trying to be bigger. It just feels like it naturally is within what the story is. And just all the characters that are involved with this movie, once you get into the story of this, it could easily have felt convoluted, but it somehow feels complete and easy to follow. Like, even the first time I was watching this, I just felt like I was on the ride, like a roller coaster. I don't have to think at all. It's just fun, up and downs, high emotions, and then just the action is so brilliantly done. Like the whole event in Mumbai in this movie is so brilliant. Of course, how you just meet this character, Pavitra Prabhakar. I'm sorry if I said that wrong there. The Indian Spider-Man, if you will. I probably did butcher that name, but when you go to that world and what they have to do, going after a spot, you have Gwen Stacy, Miles, and him fighting. And then, of course, you get Hobie Brown involved in here. I thought the way they did Spider-Punk, it was so very well done. Playing into the humor of his character while also doing exactly what you would expect his character to do, is that act how he would act. And one thing I will say before I get into any more of the characters, now I'm going on a little bit of tangent with that, the two things I do want to say, as much as I'm going to gush over this movie, there has been a couple things I've seen pop up commonly for people that they're saying, and also something that I felt a little bit. One thing was the sound mixing with this movie. I've heard various amounts of things with this. The biggest complaints I have seen, me personally, is AMC theaters in the Dolby Atmos sound. Where there's times where the music really overlaps the dialogue and they couldn't quite hear what some people say. For me, I saw a couple screens at Regal with this, and then a couple at the Cinemark, and they had an IMAX at my Cinemark. I didn't really have much of an issue with that overall. I will say when Hobie Brown first comes in, I did have to really focus the first time I watched this on what he was saying. I think that was more with his accent and the dialogue. It just kind of took me a minute to adjust to it, but it never was anything for me where there was a volume issue. I mean, there was a few times where I maybe thought, where I was like, oh, the dialogue does seem a little quieter than the music, but it was nothing that really ever affected my viewing experience. Like I've heard or seen some people where really like they were kind of pissed off because it was a great movie and they were having trouble hearing some of the stuff. So I'm not sure, honestly, if that's the sound mixing with the movie overall, or if it's some theaters are messing up, they need to raise the volume on the dialogue part. I don't know how that all goes, but I did want to mention that just in case that might be a mixed aspect, potentially negative, if it really is maybe an issue with the movie. That, and also there was one moment in this movie, Of course, the scene, you've seen it in the trailer, and if you've seen the movie, of course, I'm doing a spoiler review, so hopefully you have. The scene where Miles is talking to his mom, that whole speech she's giving him about, him growing up and how she's trying to deal with that. When watching the movie, because I am expecting everything that is to come in the movie, I do find myself a little impatient, but never in the way where I'm like, okay, this is dragging or I'm going to check out or anything. I thought it was still very well done. It's a great scene. All the deep dialogue, driven scenes I thought were all very well done. I wouldn't have cut any of it out. But I do think with the length of this movie, I have seen a few people complain about certain scenes or how the pacing sometimes switches up and you have to kind of adjust yourself. For me, I didn't feel that as much as maybe some others, but I can see where that might be an issue. For me personally, I don't quantify it as an issue. Like I said, just that one moment where I thought, oh, I'm just really excited to see all the other stuff that happens in this movie. So I think that's more of a thing with me personally, but I know others have had issues with that. But honestly, other than those two little brief qualms, potentially maybe, like I said, everything else I pretty much love about this movie. So just had to mention that just so people don't think I'm just completely gushing over this movie too much or anything like that. But let's go and get back into the characters. I mentioned Hobie Brown. I just in my friend, my roommate, when saw it, I knew that would probably be one of, if not his favorite characters. So that was really awesome to see how they did. And of course, the animation with all the characters, but specifically Spider-Punk, it felt so much like him. Just the way they would mix the colors in and just how he'd move around, the dialogue again, the lines he would say, just felt so perfect for what that character is. Of course, you get Andy Samberg in here, Scarlet Spider, Ben Reilly. Really awesome. I do wish that he was in a little bit more, but I think going into Beyond the Spider-Verse, the way they ended this movie, he was involved with Miguel in going after Miles at the current time where we're in this movie. So hopefully he'll be involved more in the next one, because I did like Andy Samberg is just such a great voice for this, and just the, that was a particularly harsh memory. Like it was so funny, and just felt kind of like a Batman, a Spider-Man or something. I'm not too that versed on Scarlet Spider specifically, but it just felt kind of like an over-the-top Batman or something, just like, oh, the tough times I've been through. I really did enjoy that very much. Of course, all the Spider people we get in this movie. Jake Johnson back as Peter B. Parker. Of course, I pretty much expected that. I'd already seen it in the trailer, but his presence was really nice in this movie. I think it really added another personal level to when all the Spider people are like really trying to convince Miles to not do what he is doing. And you have that scene where you have the one-on-one conversation with Peter B. Parker and Miles, and you have them kind of going back and forth. Miles asking why you didn't come visit me. Peter basically telling him that he wouldn't necessarily have had the kid had he not met Miles. He was kind of the inspiration to have a kid. And you get this really nice close moment, and then unfortunately, shit continues to hit the fan and the Spider people find him. I really did like that moment they had, and it really, again, added this personal struggle further to this moment where you're like, as an audience member, I'm for Miles because I love Miles, and Miguel's just being kind of a dick about this shit, really unhinged, almost psycho type shit, the way he's just coming at people, and then, of course, it only just builds and builds with that. But you're still like, Miguel might be right. I mean, he tried to live this life of going to a world where his character was already dead and tried to have the family he could have, and it just fucked up. So to him, he's like, I have to do everything I can to protect the multiverse, and I'm not gonna let this fucking one Spider-Man, Miles, who wasn't even meant to be Spider-Man, which I just love that story, how it's so complex, and emotionally as an audience member you just don't know how to feel it. Just such great writing. And then of course just with the spectacular animation and everything, it's so great. But yeah, again, without going on too much of a tangent, I loved Peter B. Parker showing up in this. But I will say, watching it, because there's so much going on, he doesn't really show up until like more than halfway through this movie, and I wasn't like, oh man, where's Peter B. Parker? I was just there's so much stuff going on, and you're just locked in on the story. When he shows up, I'm just like, oh, okay, that's pretty awesome, man. Peter B. Parker, I forgot, yeah, he's coming back into this. So Daniel Kaluuya, I just want to mention, did do the voice of Spider-Punk. I couldn't hear it when watching the movie. I knew I recognized the voice, but he did a really good job of playing that character. Issa Rae as Jessica Drew. I haven't heard too much people talking about her compared to others, but a really good job with the character, and then of course her with the voice for Issa Rae. I really just loved her entrance into this when she comes through the portal of the multiverse, if you will, and she's on her motorcycle and she like rides over the Da Vinci Vulture, which was really cool to see. That character design was very trippy. There's so many trippy visuals in this movie, and that was really just cool way introduction again, part of the prologue there when she comes in. And just of course her being pregnant, it adds a little comedic element to it that she's kicking ass. She was a really nice character involved. Didn't have quite as much to do as some others, but she was a really nice presence. Her and Gwen, the back and forth that they had throughout this movie, kind of her being an older sister type vibe in a way, kind of trying to give her advice throughout of, I've been through this shit, you know, stop fucking focusing on this Miles kid, you know, trying to get her out of that mindset to avoid the inevitable what was going to happen in this movie, Miles figuring out everything, and of course going against all the spider people. Also, even just smaller roles here, Greta Lee as Lila, the little hologram coming up for working with Miguel. Shea Wiggum as George Stacy, the father of Gwen Stacy. I did not know he was the voice for that. I've seen him in other things. Yeah, really talented guy there. He was great for the voice acting as well. Mahershala Ali, of course, is a spoiler review, so him coming back as Uncle Aaron and how they end this movie, which I'll definitely go into a little more here after I'm going to talk about all the characters. He was just, I thought, really good as the voice in the first movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and it was really a welcome sight, despite how kind of horrifying and terrifying the events that take place in this movie of what's really going on. It was still really nice to see that return, because I really do like the character of Uncle Aaron and the Prowler, the menacing villain that was, and how they're going to flip that on its head, of course, with the end of this movie, which I'll get into more. But even having an actress like Amandla Stenberg in here as Spider-Bite, I thought that was really cool. The girl, the character, she's able to just sit at home, put the goggles on, VR basically, and be hologrammed in herself, working on all the tech and stuff. And she was a really nice character. And then what ends up happening, kind of like, oh, I didn't expect that, when she helps out Miles to send him, of course, back to what he thought was going to be his home. That was very interesting. I didn't quite see that coming. There was like brief little looks and small conversations that they had throughout, but there was nothing that ever tipped me off to like, oh, she's going to try and help him if worse comes to worse. I think in the moment, just kind of like a natural thing for her, where her character thought, like, she made the decision, like, do I want to help him? What's the right thing here? And she just made what she thought was the right decision. And that was very interesting, because she could have easily system reboot and that would have been it. They would have captured Miles and everything. Jack Quaid coming up as Gwen Stacy's Peter Parker. I thought that was really awesome as well. Just to have an actor like that come in and lend his brief voice work for that character role. There's just so many roles like that in this movie that it was just kind of like little cherries on all the beautiful sundae that is this movie. Rachel Dratch as Miss Weber, the lady who holds up the papers, like, see this paper? It's blank. I thought she was a nice presence for that funny comedic scene where Miles shows up late talking about his grades and everything, which they were kind of being on his ass a little much. I will say that in this movie. They're really on Miles a lot. I get it. He's in the Visions Academy. They want him to do the best he can so he can get into places. But he's already, I mean, she was kind of saying he's already on the track to probably go to a school like Princeton. And they're kind of really being on him, which I get. It's really showing that overbearing care they have. They're not trying to be necessarily strict on him. They just really want to make sure Miles does the best he can. But I was a little bit like, he got a B in Spanish. Yeah, I get it. It's more of the joke of it. But it's like, getting A's and everything else and a B, like, come on, they can lay off him a little bit. They're kind of being a little bit hard on the guy. Like, yeah, I get it. He needs to follow the rules and everything. But, I mean, I'm on Miles' side here. I'm still close enough to being a teenager. I'm like, I'm on the kid's side here. And of course, all the little special cameos we got that were smaller. J.K. Simmons throughout lending his voice as J. Jonah Jameson. Yuri Lowenthal coming back as Insomniac Spider-Man. Danielle Perez as Charlotte Weber, or Sun Spider, was really awesome to see her play this character specifically. So Sophia Barclay, I believe, as Malala Windsor, or Spider UK. There's just so many different cameos popping up in this movie. Of course, a bunch of Easter eggs that you can go out and look on New Rockstars or whatever YouTube channel that has all the Easter eggs for that I've already watched, definitely. It's so much beautifulness. That whole sequence when they first go to see the Spider Society. Just all the different Spider-Man. If you love Spider-Man, like I said, for me, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. Batman was mine growing up, but Actually, interestingly enough, I've grown for Spider-Man to be my number one personally as I've gotten older, which is pretty interesting, but a lot of that due to Tom Holland and how much I love his Spider-Man. But as I digress, it was so awesome to be able to see what they were able to accomplish with this, all the different animation styles they were able to put together and not make it look weird or uncanny. It just all felt like so good, like it fit. And even with Miguel O'Hara's his design as Spider-Man 2099, and then the viciousness, the way he's going after Miles was just so awesome and unique, and you just see all the work and everything, the visual artistry that is on the screen. Like there's just, it's like I can't speak highly enough about it. There is no hyperbole to probably give this movie. It really is, I feel, that great of an accomplishment just visually on the screen. Josh Keaton as Spectacular Spider-Man, which, look, Spectacular Spider-Man is not my favorite version of Spider-Man. One of my other friends, that's actually one, he likes that better than the 90s animated Spider-Man, which for me is the best TV show Spider-Man for me that I like to watch. The classic nostalgic feel I get when watching that. But it was really nice to see them throw in Spectacular Spider-Man in there. Even getting like a Taron Killam as Web Slinger was awesome. The moments they had with that, the whole, all right, on three, 1, 2, there we go, 3. Nick Novicki as Lego Spider-Man. Of course, with Lord and Miller working on this. Honestly, I didn't even think or have a thought of that going into this movie. That was just brilliant, nice work. When you see the Lego Spider-Man, him going to the bathroom, do a little boop boop, and pop up and the quick change into his Spider-Man suit, talking to Miguel. And I love that line where Miguel's like, "You're one of our best." And it's just, I don't know, it's just so funny. And of course, with Lord and Miller, just the connection there, it is really awesome. I love to see that. And I would love, it'd be interesting to see. I've heard a few people mention, what if they did a Lego Spider-Man movie? That would be fucking awesome. I mean, they did a Lego Batman movie, they did an original Lego movie. It would be very interesting to see them do that, and it would be connected now in a way because you already went to this world in this movie. So I would personally love that, but we'll see if it ever happens. And of course, the big cameo, the biggest cameo that a lot of people are talking about, is Donald Glover as live action Aaron Davis. Of course, already showing up in Spider-Man Homecoming in the MCU as Aaron Davis. And if you know, of course, the post-credit scene with that movie, him talking to Miles on the phone, still webbed to that car. It stands to reason they're really setting up potentially at least having maybe Donald Glover play Aaron Davis, maybe in maybe a new Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. Maybe Miles will show up at some point within there. Some people are speculating that they'll bring in live action Miles for Beyond the Spider-Verse. And look, I'm pretty honestly mixed on this viewpoint. On one hand, yes, I think it would be great if they could find a person that would fit the role for live action. But honestly, I think, and look, I'm not one of those people that says, oh, it's got to be a specific race that plays a certain character. But I do think with this character, Miles Morales, I think it really is important to get someone that is black, but also probably also has that Puerto Rican heritage as well. I think it would just fit so well. But with that, it's so hard. You got to find someone that not only fits that, but also can act the role really good and also do all the things you need him to do within the movie. So I think it's just so much harder to be able to cast a live action Miles than what you did with Shamik Moore, who's done a great job in these two movies as Miles. But obviously, you know, he's I think later 20s or mid to late 20s. And same with like Haley Steinfeld. It'd just be hard for them to play those characters, especially if you want to have them be, you know, younger, closer to teenage years. So for me, I just think with what they have going right now, I think maybe you do like a little cameo type thing with maybe a Miles in live action, but I don't know if you make it specifically now canon, if you will, or whatever, connected to where we have our Miles for the MCU. I think it's just going to be so hard. If you find someone that's great for it, I think that would be awesome. But I think they have it down right now with the animation. Like, the way they're able to do it, I just think it's so good. And let's just have this Beyond the Spider-Verse movie come out, see what happens with that. But other than that, though, you know, try not to distract from what the main point is here. It was pretty cool to see this cameo. It wasn't the best cameo ever or anything. I know some people, the reasons why they say it is for them, specifically, of course, Donald Glover being the inspiration, mainly if you know the story behind the character Miles Morales and how they brought it back around, him playing Aaron Davis. I think personally it would be a great casting to see him be the Prowler, if it is a first dealing with maybe Tom Holland Spider-Man and then we meet a Miles. I think that Prowler character in live action, if they could do it right, I mean, his powers, the look, the purple. He was very menacing in that Into the Spider-Verse movie when he's chasing down Miles, and just the way they're able to do an animation. Again, it's just, I don't know. I'm very mixed on that whole thing personally, bringing Miles and everything to live action. I think it's going to be very hard to accomplish and bring about, but I'm excited to see if they can do it. I really do want it to happen, but we'll see. But in terms of all the characters, that's pretty much the main ones I kind of ran through there here on this spoiler talk review. Once you get to the end of this movie, though, I thought the way they build up this cliffhanger in this movie, I know a lot of people, there's been certain people that have been upset by this cliffhanger in this movie. Some people weren't expecting it as much as others. There's a certain amount of people that didn't even know there was going to be a Beyond the Spider-Verse coming out next year, is where it's scheduled to come out. For me, knowing that there was going to be another movie after this, it didn't bother me at all. But as a person who was loving this movie, I think I gave this movie the reaction that the people that made this film wanted me to have, which I was just like, no. It's like almost 2.5 hours, but by the end of it, like, I felt it coming. The way they build it up with the music and what's going on within the story. First of all, the way they present to you that Miles is in the wrong universe. The first time I watched it, I felt like something was off, but I didn't know. I didn't guess it in my head. And then watching it again, the few times that I have since then, you definitely see all the little cues. The fact that the city just looks different, has a different hue to it. Of course, the big one when the mom reacts to when he tells her that he's Spider-Man, and is like, who's Spider-Man? Of course, from even the beginning of this movie, she mentions that one line in that brief little scene where she's like, oh, I think the new Spider-Man's Puerto Rican. And then, of course, Miles is like, I think he's Dominican. Which I really love that line. You already have that there where it's like she knows that there's a Spider-Man and who she is. So like that right there basically gave it away. But still, even in the first time watching it, I'm like, what is quite going on here? And then you get right before he realized that, I kind of was like, oh, fuck. Is he in the wrong universe? And then it just happened. It's a great reveal. The way they did it stylistically, and how you have Gwen, going back, everything that happens with, Miguel and all the Spider people basically condemning her back to her place. Her resolution she has with her father, I thought was so well done. Again, you get that beautiful like water color animation, again, expressing their emotions. You get that beautiful light white color at the end when they finally come together and have that talk and accept the fact that she is Spider-Woman and reconnect again. And then going out, Gwen, where you think she's in the same universe, and how they just really line those both up. The mirroring of Gwen going to Miles's room once she's in there, and you start to realize how it looks different, and Miles is obviously not in there. And then just the way they build that whole ending up, I thought was just really brilliantly done. And then, of course, you get the reveal of the fact that he's in Earth 42, where the original spider was that bit him. And, of course, tying into everything where he really wasn't supposed to be Spider-Man. It was an accident, and how I'm just really excited to see how they deal with that, how they connect all three of these movies and Miles' character arc, where it goes. And I think what we're probably going to end up getting is the realization that because Miles is different, because, yes, he wasn't supposed to be bit by the spider, but he's going to use that to his advantage. It's not going to be like an issue or a problem, but he's going to have to really deal with that emotionally. I mean, everything was flipped on his head in this movie, which is so great. For a second movie, a sequel is exactly what you want in this movie. And then just how it ends with Uncle Aaron coming in and just, again, the stylistic way when he holds his hand out to give him a dap, and you get that Earth 42 right there lined up. And just a brilliant way they go out, and all of a sudden you get, of course, the other version of Miles come up as who is the Prowler in this universe. There's no Spider-Man. He was going to be the one that was going to get bit, and now he's the Prowler. Just how the whole butterfly effect, or spider effect, I guess, if you will, in this movie. That was probably a little cheap, but I just really I really did enjoy the ending, but I had to admit, I was like, oh, it's a great way to end it. The music is so just great, and when the To Be Continued comes up, and then Spider-Man Across Spider-Verse, it just, I really did enjoy it. It was a great ending. There was no need for any mid-credit or post-credit scenes. Just leave it like that. We're going to get Beyond the Spider-Verse hopefully next year. I just really just loved almost everything about this movie. Just pure joy at the end of it. This movie felt like a roller coaster ride that was intense and yet fun. Very deep, great character story, somehow making it more personal for Miles while making it a bigger, grander story with all these Spider people coming in. Never felt too convoluted. I had such a great time with this. Again, just even some of the smaller animation within it, pulling from what they did from the first one and continuing to make it look like just a comic book put on the screen, even having multiple times throughout this movie. I believe they did it in the first one. I'm not sure as much, but putting up like a comic, another, like it's the next issue we're going to throughout this movie, doing that, making you feel like you're reading a run of comics. Like it's just, it was so brilliantly done. The little boxes they would put at the bottom, like in a comic, explaining certain stuff, like when the Spider-Punk said Scooby-Doo, and basically putting it in and putting down, of course, that being a Cockney slang. It was just, there's so many moments like that. The horse, the pals, and the little words that would come up like in a comic book. It was just, it's so, like, you can tell there's so much care, not only for comic book characters, but specifically Spider-Man in this movie, and making a great movie for that. And look, that is pretty much most of my main thoughts on this, going off on more of just a long spoiler tangent, if you will, on this movie. I absolutely loved this. It met my expectations and exceeded, went past the line which I thought or hoped that it would go to. And I'm just hoping if they can pay this off with Beyond the Spider-Verse, for me it'll probably be maybe my personal favorite trilogy of all time. And it could be one of the best just in general in movies. And I love the fact that people are giving more and more appreciation to animation as well. There's so much you can do. Again, with this story specifically too, like if you try to do this story in live action, it just almost would feel like too much. There's so much more you have to do with effects and everything. With animation, it's still obviously a ton of hard work, but visually it's just way better to pull off. And again, there's something just about feeling like you're watching a comic book just come to life in front of you that is just, it just warms my heart. And honestly, now I might have a debate, honestly, in my head of, I've always, of course, Peter Parker's been like, the original, whatever Peter Parker has been my favorite Spider-Man, but Miles Morales, there's something about him that just has this coolness that I'm just drawn to, where he's just, he's still got that good Spider-Man quality. Of course, his character in this, wanting to do the right thing, has that in common with all the other Spider people of just, maybe other than Miguel, of wanting to help out the people they love while also helping the world. By the end of the trilogy, Miles Morales might be my favorite Spider-Man. I mean, he's just so cool, along with his powers, the uniqueness of the Venom, and then of course, the invisibility, which they use throughout this movie, especially that moment when he basically charges, fucking blows Miguel off that bullet train. Just such great visuals again with this movie. And I could go on, honestly, for a couple hours just reminiscing, talking about certain moments. It was just, honestly, this is brilliant, job well done. Like, watching this movie, I was like, this is an instant classic. Like, it's just beautiful. And so that is my main spoiler thoughts. I am going to go ahead and give this a rating. I will give Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, in case anyone is surprised, a 10 out of 10. I gave Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse the same rating. I hoped, but I had no idea this movie could get to a 10 out of 10 as well for me. I was blown away. Like, I was just thinking about this movie all night after I saw it on Thursday, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Seen it 4 times, and I haven't gotten tired of it at all. Gonna definitely see it a couple more times, probably, but yeah, that is my main thoughts. I love this movie. Let's go, Spider-Man. What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below. What was your thoughts on this movie? Did you not like it maybe as much as most others? Did you like it like a lot of others? What are your main thoughts? Any specific moments that you remember that is your favorite part of this movie? What are your thoughts on just Spider-Man in general? Whatever you think, leave a comment down below. Also, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and hit that subscribe button as well. If this is your first time watching any of my videos, I appreciate it very much. And if you're a returning viewer as well, that is also very much appreciated. And you can also follow me on TikTok and add me on Snapchat, where I will post content similar to this. But for the most part, my content will be here on this YouTube channel, Not Your Average Josh. So I thank you again. This is my real first ever full-on spoiler going into the details of a movie. I just loved it so much. I just wanted to kind of go through and talk about my favorite moments with this. So whoever's watching this, I appreciate it very much. But that'll be it for now. I'll be looking for more videos very soon. I plan at the end of this month, the new Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny movie is coming out. I'm going to rewatch the first 3 Indiana Jones movies, and for the first time, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I've never seen that movie. I've just always heard not so good things about it. Still very interested to see what happens with that, but I'm going to be doing an Indiana Jones film review series throughout this month leading up to that new Indiana Jones movies. And of course, a bunch of other new movies that are going to be coming out this month I'm going to be reviewing as well. Be looking for more videos very soon, and I will talk to you guys later.